Hello and welcome to Arcadian. I just finished watching Critical Role episode 51 when the Apogee Solstice happens. I still have some episodes to catch on, but I'm making some progress. However, it did strike me how similar this was to a typical case of railroading, and I wanted to address the issue. I will try to keep this video as generic as I can, but it's almost impossible to make this completely spoiler-free. When I do enter some spoiler territory, I will warn you on screen, but be warned that this video might have some spoilers from Critical Role episode 51 and forward. Now, let me preface this by saying that I don't really believe that this was a railroad. I suspect that if things played out differently, or if the players had come up with a genius idea, or even if the dice had fallen in a different place, Mercer would have allowed the players to prevent what ended up happening. However, it still felt very railroady at times, and that could have led to some player dissatisfaction. It wasn't a real railroad, but it could have felt like one to some. To summarize what happened, and spoiler alert, the players were trying to prevent the Ruby Vanguard from summoning a god predator using a big tower-like structure. The players' primary plan was to crash their airship against the tower, but that was easily deflected by Ludinus the Leth, who created a force field around the structure, causing the ship to explode with little to no effect. Since Orim has ties to the Arashari, he also called in Killith for help. Little after the ceremony began, she appeared in Earth Elemental form and started delivering chaos. However, it was revealed that the enemy was expecting her, and Othohan Thul, a legendary warrior in service of the Vanguard, started pummeling down on her hard. Just when Thul was about to deliver the killing blow on Killith, Vaxilan from Campaign 1 suddenly appeared to protect her in what was one of the most epic moments in Critical Role. But the enemy was expecting him too, and activated an arcane device that trapped Vaxildan into an object they needed to actually complete the ceremony. In short, the enemies were expecting the players to summon Killith and Vax to come to her aid, and since they needed Vax to complete their plan, it all fell into their hands. The ceremony was completed, the machine was activated, and half of the party was sent to the other side of the globe with the conflagration of arcane energy that resulted. This was extremely exciting. In fact, it might have been my favorite moment of Campaign 3 until now. However, it did feel like the players didn't have much to do at times. While all of this was happening, it felt like they had little agency or choice. We will never know for sure if this was a railroad or not, only Mercer does. We could only hypothesize that if the players decided to confront the enemies before that happened, or if they were able to take down Thul in their quarters, or if they were able to crash their skyship under the veil of the sandstorm before Ludinus created the shield, this could all have been prevented. There's no evidence that Mercer would have trampled over their players' choices in order to enforce the plot that he wanted to happen. But if we analyze what happened, when the players tried to crash an airship into the tower, that was deflected by a spell that I'm not sure exists. Obviously, the BBEG can have some spells and abilities that the players don't have access to, but still it felt a bit overpowered. Also, when Thul started to attack Killith, it all happened so fast that there was no way that the players could have made an impact in that fight. Even if Ludinus had stayed away from the fight, 2 rounds was not enough for them to take down Thul before she was able to kill Killith. Again, we could say that the players could have prevented all of this from happening if they took down Thul before. But they didn't. They didn't know what would end up happening at the time. And once the fight began, they were mere spectators. And also, there were a lot of things that they didn't have control over. They were not able to control when the ship crashed, when Killith arrived, that Vax would appear. In the end, it felt like they were mere passengers on a train that had already a course set. I'm going to repeat myself once more, just so I don't get murdered in the comments. I don't believe that this was a railroad, and we can't find proof that it actually was. But if I was a player at that table, I might have felt like I was in one. And I know this because I played railroads on both sides of the screen. The feeling of player agency is one of the most precious things that DMs need to preserve in D&D. The magic of the game lies in a player feeling like they can do anything to impact a story that is not yet written and can be altered at any time, be it by the player's actions or by the roll of the die. This probably was not a railroad, but if I was a player at that table, considering how little I could do to impact the story, I could have felt like Mercer had planned this all from the beginning and I was just there to watch him tell the tale. I don't doubt that Mercer did have this event outcome as the main possibility to happen when he was planning the session, but that is not the same thing as saying that he would force this outcome down the players' throats even if they try to escape it. And this puts the DM in a very delicate position. On one hand, this session could have felt like a railroad to certain players, and though the players seem to be enjoying the story, engaging in a railroad is never a good idea, except in very special cases. But on the other hand, this wasn't really a railroad. If there was a dissatisfied player thinking they were in a railroad, that would have been unfair to the DM because technically they could have altered the outcome of the story with their own actions and the DM would never prevent that. It's like that thing where you don't need to be guilty of a crime, you only need to look like you could be in order to go to jail. So the key lesson that I wanted to highlight from this episode of Critical Role was that as a DM, you should try not only to stay away from railroads, but also making sure that your sessions don't even look like one. This is easier said than done, but there's a trick to it. First, make sure that everything the players engage with can be affected by their actions, in one way or another. This doesn't mean that you need to make Ludinus the Leth or Orohan Thul defeatable by the players. It's enough to include a gimmick that justifies the usefulness of the players' actions. Basically, you don't want them to feel like spectators, but rather as active and, most importantly, relevant agents in the story. For example, imagine it was clear Bell's Hells didn't need to defeat Orohan Thul because that was Killet's responsibility, but rather they needed to wreck this arcane device that powered Thul's Echo Knight magic item. This way, it becomes clear that what is their contribution to the story, to the scenario. They were not fighting to kill Thul, they were fighting to give Killet a chance, and her victory or defeat depends on them. But maybe even more than that, assure that the events that keep unfolding in your story can be easily interpreted as consequences of the player's actions and decisions. It's not enough for you, the DM, to know what's happening is attributed to the players. Or worse, it's not enough for you to know that things only end up so badly because the players didn't act. They might have not even realized they were supposed to act at all. If there is a chance for them to do something, make sure that is evident. If their actions or lack thereof will have consequences, make sure those stakes are known at the moment of the action. This will make their conquest feel more satisfying in case of victory, but will also prevent the feeling of unfairness because they didn't know the whole picture if things end up in defeat. Remember, there's a slight dissonance between the players and the DM in terms of information. The DM always knows the information about the campaign, which pieces are relevant and not, and what the players can do or need to do to accomplish their objectives. But the players can only guess and then try. I hope you liked this small discussion. Sometimes I enjoy making these videos less scripted, more improvised, to comment on something that I saw or that happened recently. If you like this video though, consider leaving a like so others can watch it too, and also subscribing to the channel. I have videos aimed at teaching how to play the game to players like this one up here, and also others where I share my DM tips like this one over here. Thank you so much for watching. I'm the first Arcadian, and I hope to see you in the next video.